Let's start today with the fascinating story of how the president of Russian Terroristic Federation, dictator Putin, undermined the authority of the Chinese leader Xi Jinping by announcing the deployment of nuclear weapons on the territory of Belarus.
Даже вне контекста вот этих событий, этого заявления, Александр Григорьевич Лукашенко давно ставит вопрос о том, чтобы разместить на территории Беларуси российское тактическое ядерное оружие.
In a joint statement during visit Xi Jinping to Moscow, the Chinese president and dictator Putin announced that all nuclear-armed states should refrain from deploying nuclear weapons abroad. However, what do you think happened next? A few days later, Putin announced plans to deploy tactical nuclear weapons in Belarus. And of course, this negatively affected the image of China as a mediator in this conflict. I mean, the war against Ukraine. China immediately reacted, and country's foreign ministry stated that it opposes the placement of Russian nuclear weapons in Belarus. Meanwhile, according to Wall Street Journal, America has stopped exchanging data on strategic nuclear forces with the Russian Terroristic Federation. At the same time, foreign affairs source opined that Xi Jinping is preparing China for the war, and the world should take him seriously. They emphasize that Xi Jinping announced his intention to increase the defense budget by another 7.2%, which has already doubled over the past 10 years. He visited the Zaporizhzhya nuclear power plant and declared that, unfortunately, it can't be protected. Despite the fact that inspectors of International Atom Energy Agency have been present at the occupied plant for 7 months, the situation at the Zaporizhzhya nuclear power plant is still dangerous. And let us remind you that the Russians cite the nuclear power plant and, judging the way how they behave, they either deliberately want to cause the nuclear disaster, or maybe Russians are really very stupid, which confirms the fact that Russians at the beginning of the war bugged themselves in the forest in Chernobyl and then died in Belarus from radiation. At previous week was 1 year since the Russians dropped a bomb on the drama theater in Mariupol, where hundreds of people were hiding from Russian missiles. Informed Napalm source notes that the occupier who ordered the bombing of the drama theater and the maternity hospital in Mariupol has been identified. This is the commander of the assault air regiment of the Russian Federation, Sergei Atroshenko, and unfortunately, a native of Zaporizhzhya region of Ukraine, who later moved to Russian Lipetsk and then to Russian Voronezh. Ukrainian activists not only established the identity and place of service of the killer of Ukrainian civilians, but also gained access to his email and personal accounts. This war criminal saw the inscription "Children" next to drama theater in Mariupol, and they knew that civilians were hiding there. The world should know every Russian terrorist in face. Since the beginning of the war against Ukraine, Russia has already killed 466 children and it kidnapped about 4,400 Ukrainian children. The Center of National Resistance under the Special Operations Forces of the Ukrainian Armed Forces compiled a map of the camps where the Russians take deported Ukrainian children. The map of 45 children and 12 military camps was created on the basis of data from open sources and will be supplemented. As can be seen from the geography, the process of taking children to the Russian Federation is systematic and prepared in advance. Despite the Russian Federation statements about the forced steps and evacuation of children from the war zone, especially taking into account that there is some rules about this forced evacuation, like siblings shouldn't be separated or parents and children shouldn't be separated, but Russians do all in a different way. They separate each member of family. These camps include orphans, some of whom became orphans as a result of the murder of their parents by the Russians. Then there is children from boarding schools who have relatives in Ukraine, but they are still forcibly removed. And children of parents who didn't pass the Russian screening and ended up in Russian torture camps. In the camps, according to a pre-prepared program, children are taught Russian history and distorted interpretation of the war in Ukraine, and children have to learn the Russian national anthem. I guess already know what the forced forgetting of one's history is called. People calls it genocide. Belogorivka, Bakhmut, Avdiivka, Maryinka still remain the center of hostilities. Currently, the occupiers have occupied 2/3 of Bakhmut. According to Zelensky's word in one of the interviews, if Bakhmut falls, Putin can start enlisting international support and demand unacceptable compromises from Ukraine. But we believe in our defenders, in our partners in Ukrainian armed forces, and it won't happen. Well, and the close part for today is another masterpiece from Russia's propaganda. And now I want to write the topic of Russia's propaganda so that you can understand how it works. A video was spreading on the internet where it seems that allegedly Ukrainian military officer attacked a car with a woman and her child. But specialists of OSINT determined that exact location where the video was filmed, and it was the rear of Donetsk. And what the Ukrainians convoys were doing there? Maybe one can only guess. Even if you don't take into account the fact that if there was a child and they were attacked, then usually the child would start crying only at the sight of a huge angry military man who go to attack, yeah? But this didn't happen. And secondly, according to the deterrent coordinates, this territory is not yet under the control of Ukrainian military. And third one, the specialist determined the type of car that actually never been in Ukraine. Well, special director's operation failed completely. And even Russian media and some channels admit that the video is fake. This was the last for today. Thank you that you stayed with us at YakovlevTwins channel. Glory to Ukraine, to our defenders and partners.